Hi everyone and welcome to the video. So today's video is about giving feedback to school students at schools debating competitions if you are predominantly experienced in university debating. So this might not be the most useful video if you are someone who's getting into schools debating as a judge but you've got no experience of university debating and you're just coming at it from maybe a public speaking point of view or something like that. Um, this might be useful, but this is very much made with the aim and the thought of university debaters who are starting to do some schools debating. Now, if you're a university debater, I hope this video doesn't come across as like a go or like all the things you're doing wrong, because if you are a university debater who chooses to do some judging, you're almost certainly doing it unpaid or you're getting paid tuppence, and you're giving up potentially quite a lot of time and sometimes like full Saturdays. So you're doing an amazing thing, and as a teacher, I really appreciate it. And so this isn't a go at university debate judges who are coming along to schools competitions out of the goodness of their heart. This is just meant to be useful for anyone who is a schools debate judge or who wants to get involved in schools debate and judging. And some of the common mistakes I see as a sort of long-standing debate coach and teacher. And I think another really important thing to say here is I've made all these mistakes, 100%. I started debating as a university debater, then I became a university debate judge, then I became a coach, now I'm a teacher. And at the start, I made all these mistakes. So it's totally normal and it's not an attack on anyone. Today, I just want to talk about the type of feedback that you give, the tone of that feedback, the length of that feedback, and then really importantly, the goals of feedback, especially at schools level, because I think that's something that we don't think about enough. So, type of feedback. So, at university level, we usually give exclusively call justification as the type of feedback. That is, the entire 50 minutes oral adjudication is why was the call the way that it was? And I think that there's a lot of reasons that's quite useful at university, but a lot of these reasons don't apply to schools level debating, particularly intermediate to novice schools level debating. It does apply a lot more at advanced schools level debating. The reasons that call justification is so useful, understanding a game is a great way of improving at that game. Judges have to watch their backs because there's a lot more complaints in the university circuit. Judging is a lot more competitive in the university circuit. But also, calls are a lot more complicated at the university circuit because there's a lot more being said. It's 7 minute speeches versus 5 minute speeches, but also the content is just much denser, much deeper. There's a lot more going on. If you take even a straights room at Euros or even a random IV and just look at the amount of content in terms of arguments, analysis, impacting, and even things like framing, and then compare that to a straights room at a schools competition, let alone a -1 room at a junior schools competition, the level of content is massively different. And this is really important because in a room where there's not that much content, and a lot of kids are just kind of asserting different things, and there's not as much engagement because everyone's kind of talking past each other. You can explain the call really quickly, and most kids will either just accept it because you're an adult and you're an authority, or they won't because they're arrogant little shits. But the call justification isn't going to be the most useful thing if the debate itself was a little bit of a mess. What is actually much more useful is picking one or two things that all the kids in the room needed to work on and then explaining how to work on it. And a big part of that is if you give kids 15 minutes of call justification, the kids don't have the same level of self-efficacy and just raw ability as university students to pick out the salient points in that oral adjudication and implement it in their debating. Kids need a little bit more instruction, particularly younger ones. If you give them a 15-minute monologue, they're going to switch off listening to you after 45 seconds and they'll never remember 95% of what you say by the time the next round starts. Whereas if you say to them, okay, look, you all need to analyze more. Does everyone have a piece of paper and a pen? Okay, take down some notes. Here's 2 ways that helped me get better at analysis. And speak to them for just 2 or 3 minutes, real quick lesson, send them on their way. These kids might actually try some of that next round or the round after, and if they keep getting feedback like that, they definitely will try that. and then that kid has meaningfully improved at an important aspect of debating. Please remember that at schools competitions, most kids aren't hardcore debaters. You know, they're not all the sort of Eton and St. Paul's kids who debate every weekend and have excellent coaches and are really invested in this game. A lot of kids at schools competitions are just kind of there because, you know, it sounded kind of fun, or they had a teacher kind of push them into it, or, you know, they had a parent who was like, that'd be good, or they want something on their personal statement. So they need quite clear instruction and sometimes quite clear help. And lots of kids don't have coaches and aren't going to spend time on YouTube learning how to do principles, let alone or even like how to impact. They need someone to tell them how to do that. And so I think that the type of feedback you should be giving at a lot of schools rooms is super quick call justification. I'm talking a minute or two, and then move on to, okay, look, you all need to understand what stakeholder analysis is because you all tried to do it and all messed it up. Here's what it is. Or none of you spoke for more than 3 minutes. That suggests you all struggle to come up with arguments. Here's some matter generation tips. That stuff's really useful for kids. Call justification can be useful. It's certainly useful for advanced kids, but it's usually not the most useful thing. I think this is the most obvious thing, and so I don't think I need to spend much time on it. But please do remember that they are kids, and they are doing something that for a lot of kids is really difficult. So please do be nice, be enthusiastic, be friendly. Please don't swear at them or use like really inappropriate examples, like talking about, you know, rape culture or um, torture. If you don't have to, you know, if you're using them as examples in an education motion for some reason, just try to keep it PG if you can, and always try to be encouraging. Just try to be nice to the kids. You know that shouldn't be complicated, but yet it is, for some reason. So very similar to tone is pitch. Um, when we say pitch, what I mean by this is, you know, what vocabulary are you using? Right? These are students. They are probably significantly younger than you. They are children. They may not understand words that you think are part of regular parlance, in particular perhaps words that are part of regular debating parlance, but that a school student might not know. That doesn't have to just be things like delta. They might not know what a metric is, you know, or the difference between a point of summary and a point of clash, or what a concessionary POI is. And certainly if you're talking about emotion that involves spec knowledge, you know, you can't assume that kids are going to understand things like supply and demand, or even, you know, first past the post sometimes, depending on their age. Obviously, if you've watched the debate closely, you should have a much better idea what the kids do and don't know. But I have seen a lot of university judges give feedback, and they're talking about, you know, comparative asserted metrics, or why they might want to discuss, um, you know, the power imbalance in coalition governments or something like that. And it's like, I mean, are these the debate I just watched? Every kid spoke for 2 minutes, and none of them analysed a single thing. I don't know that you can assume they know what those words mean. And yeah, also just speed. If you're speaking at a really fast clip, that might be kind of normal for you because you're a debater, and you might be able to absorb people who speak that quickly because you're a debate judge. But students might not be able to follow you that quickly. As a teacher, I speak a lot slower than I do when I'm talking to regular people in regular conversation, certainly much slower than I do when I debate. So just be aware of that as well. In terms of length, this is the biggest mistake I see at schools competitions. I think 5 to 10 minutes is the feedback you should be giving for a 40-minute BP debate where kids are speaking for 5 minutes. Kids will not listen to you monologue at them for 15 minutes. There's a reason that at schools we don't do lectures and at universities we do. Because young kids don't sit still for 15 minutes and absorb information. I mean, some of them do, but most of them don't. Very few teachers will ever monologue for 15 minutes in a classroom. We're more interactive. So if you're going to give a 15-minute monologue in your OA, like, kids aren't listening to you, and even the ones that are trying to listen to you will struggle and then will forget everything you said. 5 minutes is good. 7, 8 minutes I think is probably about the norm for me. 10 minutes is probably too much. 50 minutes is way too much. Unless it's a very interactive discussion where you're genuinely having almost a tutorial like discussion with them for 15 minutes about one aspect of debating that you think they'll need to know more about, that might be really useful. But if you're just talking at like 14-year-olds for 15 minutes, it's wasting everyone's time. It's really bad, and it doesn't help, and it also makes it so much less enjoyable for students because it's boring, and it's 2 human hours if you've made 8 kids sit there and listen to you for 15 minutes that are just wasted, and if they have to listen to that boring monologue 3, 4 times a day every time they go to a competition, they're going to be less likely to come along. So just don't subject them to that, please. The last and sometimes most important thing is when you're about to give feedback to some students, please try to think to yourself, what is the goal of this feedback? And try to understand like what level are these kids at? How are you going to pitch this feedback? What do you want them to take away from this feedback? Because sometimes when you judge like a +2 room at ICYD or maybe like LSE or something, then you might think, okay, I'm giving them a 15-minute OA monologue of feedback, just of a call justification, because these kids were astounding, and that's what they need to hear because they're all good enough to be doing it at university. Cool. But if equally, if you're like, wow, all these kids just completely misunderstood this motion, what I want from this feedback is that they go away understanding what this motion was actually meant to be about. And so if they saw this motion tomorrow, they could debate it fine. That's a great goal for feedback. If you're like, I think these kids are feeling shell shocked because that was a terrible motion and they all kind of set the world on fire, then you probably want the goal to be that these kids don't feel bad about themselves, don't feel stupid, and are happy to debate again today, or happy to go into the next round. That's a great goal as well. Just try to think in the feedback like what do I want the kids to take away from this feedback? And a lot of the time, what I want kids to take away from feedback is they learned something, they know how to do something that they didn't know how to do before. They feel it's not ideally good about themselves, but if not good about themselves, then not terrible about themselves, and they're looking forward to the next round. If I can get some combination of those things, I feel like I'm doing pretty well. So thanks. I hope you found that useful. Please do feel free to contact me or contact us, Stand Up Speaking, if you want more of this, particularly if you're looking to get really involved in schools debating as a judge, but you're a little unsure how to talk to teenagers or what the major differences are between schools debating and university debating because you started debating at university, as did I. We'd love to chat to you. I mean that's what we do. That's our entire purpose. Um, I am also making a video about how to CA schools competitions because there are some common mistakes that are made there, particularly if you've CA'd some university things and you come to CA some schools things. They're quite different roles. So I think that's quite a useful thing to chat about. So check that out if you would like. In the meantime, if you are doing any schools judging, even if it's just a little, like sincerely thank you. As a teacher who's been involved in debating for over a decade now, I know how big a difference it makes to some of my students to have these opportunities to go to competitions, get decent feedback, have really interesting intellectual discussions, and feel the confidence they get from that. It makes a world of difference. Schools debating is an amazing thing. So thanks if you are volunteering. And yeah, once again, this was not a goal at University Judges. It was just meant to be helpful. So I hope that it was, and see you later.